3 months ago, my boss cornered me in the hallway. He was furious about a report I'd submitted. His face was red. His voice was getting louder with every word. And everyone in the office could hear him tearing me apart. I felt my heart racing. My hands started sweating. Every instinct told me to either fight back or apologize and run. But then I remembered something I'd read the night before. Something an ancient philosopher had written about power and silence. So instead of doing what he expected, I looked him straight in the eye and said one sentence. Just one. And you know what happened? He stopped mid-rant. His mouth literally hung open for a second. Then he just walked away. Didn't say another word. 3 people came up to me later that day asking, "What did you say to him?" And that's what I'm going to share with you today. Not just that one sentence, but 5 responses so sharp, so precise, that they stop people in their tracks. No yelling. No insults. Just pure, controlled intelligence. By the end of this, you'll have exactly what you need to handle your difficult boss, that manipulative family member, or anyone who thinks they can steamroll you with volume and aggression. And I'm warning you now, number 3 is so effective, if you use it wrong, you might actually feel guilty about how completely it shuts people down. But before we get there, let me tell you about the worst argument I ever lost. I was 23, fresh out of college, working my first real job. And there was this guy, let's call him Derek, who had it out for me from day one. He was older, more experienced, and he loved making me look stupid in meetings. One day, we disagreed about a project approach. I knew I was right. I had the data. I had the logic. I had everything. But Derek? He just got louder. He talked over me. He dismissed my points with a wave of his hand. He made jokes that got everyone else laughing. And I lost that argument. Not because I was wrong, but because I didn't know how to stay in control when someone was trying to dominate me. I went home that night feeling humiliated. Angry at Derek, but mostly angry at myself. Because deep down, I knew the problem wasn't him. It was me. I'd let him set the rules of the game. And in his game, whoever shouted loudest won. That's when I started reading about the Stoics. These ancient philosophers who lived 2,000 years ago. And you know what blew my mind? They'd already figured this out. They'd already cracked the code on how to hold power without losing your cool. Epictetus, this guy who was literally born a slave, said something that changed how I saw everything. He who cannot control his tongue will be a slave to his emotions. And that's when it clicked. Every time I'd lost an argument, I'd been enslaved. Not by the other person, but by my own reaction to them. So let me give you the first response. The one that starts changing everything. I don't need to raise my voice to be right. Sounds simple, right? But watch what happens when you actually use it. Last month, my neighbor started yelling at me about my dog barking. Now, my dog barely barks. But this guy was having a bad day and decided to take it out on me. He came to my door, already loud, already aggressive. Old me would have matched his energy, would have defended myself loudly, would have turned it into a screaming match in the hallway. Instead, I waited, let him finish his rant. Then I said calmly, "I don't need to raise my voice to be right." The effect was immediate. He blinked. His shoulders dropped slightly. The wind just went out of his sails. Because he'd prepared for a fight, and I'd refused to give him one. Here's what most people don't understand. When someone raises their voice, they're not showing strength. They're showing they've lost control. And the moment you refuse to join them in that chaos, you expose that weakness. You're essentially saying, "I'm not playing your game. I'm playing mine. And in my game, whoever has the clearest mind wins." Marcus Aurelius, a guy who literally ruled the Roman Empire, wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." And that's exactly what this phrase does. It makes you unlike them. It elevates you above the noise. But here's where it gets interesting. Because not everyone attacks with volume. Some people attack with something much more subtle. And that's where the second response comes in. The way you speak says more about you than it does about me. My sister has this ex-boyfriend who was a master of passive-aggressive comments. He'd make these little digs. "Oh, you're wearing that? Brave choice." Or, "I'm surprised you got that promotion." They must have been desperate. For months, she'd try to defend herself, try to explain, try to win his approval. Until one day, after another snide remark, she just looked at him and said, "The way you speak says more about you than it does about me." And he had nothing. Because what can you say to that? She hadn't insulted him. She hadn't defended herself. She just held up a mirror. And he saw exactly what kind of person he was being. This response is beautiful because it's like verbal Aikido. You're not blocking their attack. You're redirecting it back to them. You're making them confront their own behavior. Seneca, another Stoic philosopher, talked about how most people are slaves to their impulses. They say hurtful things without thinking, then wonder why their relationships fall apart. But when you use this phrase, you're showing them the consequence of their words in real time. And here's the magic: it doesn't just silence them. It often makes them apologize. Because once you force someone to hear themselves, they usually don't like what they hear. But what about when the conversation itself becomes toxic? When it's clear the other person isn't trying to communicate, they're just trying to wound you. That's when you need the third response. And this is the one I told you about at the beginning. The nuclear option. Let's talk when we can do it respectfully. Remember my boss from the beginning? The one who cornered me in the hallway? This is what I said to him. And it worked because of one simple reason. It shifted the entire power dynamic. See, he expected me to either cower or fight back. Either way, he stays in control. But by calmly stating that I would only continue the conversation under conditions of mutual respect, I took control back. I wasn't asking for permission. I wasn't begging for better treatment. I was stating a boundary. And boundaries, when stated clearly and calmly, are almost impossible to argue against. Epictetus taught his students, you cannot control what others do, but you can control what you accept. And this phrase is you controlling what you accept. You're saying, if you want access to me, to my time, to this conversation, here are the terms. Most people are terrified to do this. They think setting boundaries means being rude or aggressive. But it's actually the opposite. It's being so clear about your standards that the other person has to either meet them or walk away. And you know what's funny? When my boss walked away that day, I thought I'd made a huge mistake. Thought I'd just ended my career. But 2 days later, he came to my desk much calmer and said, "Can we talk about that report?" And we had a completely productive conversation. Because I'd trained him. I'd shown him that screaming wouldn't work on me. That if he wanted my cooperation, he needed to treat me like an adult. But here's the thing. Not every battle is worth fighting. Sometimes the smartest move is just to walk away. And that's where response number 4 comes in. I'd prefer not to continue this conversation. My uncle is one of those people who loves to argue about politics at family dinners. Doesn't matter what you say, he'll find a way to turn it into a debate. And he doesn't debate to learn or exchange ideas. He debates to win, to dominate, to make you feel stupid. For years, I'd engage. I'd try to reason with him. I'd bring facts, logic, examples. And every single time, I'd leave the table frustrated and exhausted. Then last Thanksgiving, he started up again. And instead of taking the bait, I just said, I'd prefer not to continue this conversation. He looked shocked. What? You can't handle a little debate? I smiled. I can. I just prefer not to. And that was it. I went back to eating. Didn't explain myself. Didn't justify. Just closed the door. Marcus Aurelius wrote something that stuck with me. Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. And that's what this phrase does. It's you choosing. You're not running away. You're not admitting defeat. You're simply deciding your peace is worth more than proving a point. Because here's what took me years to learn. You don't owe anyone a debate. You don't owe anyone your emotional energy. And when someone is clearly not interested in understanding you, continuing to engage is just self-harm. This phrase is like a shield. It protects you from people who want to drain you. And the best part? It's inarguable. What are they going to say? No, you have to keep talking to me. That just makes them look worse. But the final response, number 5, this one's different. Because it's not for enemies. It's for people you actually care about. People who mean well, but are overstepping. That's your opinion, and I respect it, but I don't share it. My mom spent years trying to convince me to become a lawyer. In her mind, it was the only respectable career. Anytime I mentioned my actual interests, she'd shut them down. That's not practical. That won't pay the bills. You need security. For a long time, I'd argue back. Try to convince her she was wrong. Try to get her approval. But it never worked. We'd just end up in the same circular argument. Then one day, I tried something different. She started her usual speech about law school, and I just said, "That's your opinion, Mom, and I respect it. But I don't share it." She paused. "What does that mean?" "It means I hear you. I understand where you're coming from. But I've made a different choice for my life." And you know what? She didn't like it at first. But she accepted it. Because I hadn't attacked her view. I hadn't tried to prove her wrong. I just calmly asserted my right to think differently. Seneca said, "To be a slave to the opinion of others is the worst of all prisons." And this phrase is the key that unlocks that prison. It gives you permission to disagree without destroying the relationship. Because sometimes the people we love most are the ones who push the hardest. Not because they're trying to hurt us, but because they genuinely believe they know what's best. And this response lets you honor their intentions while still maintaining your autonomy. It says, I value you, but I'm not you. I respect your experience, but I have my own. I love you, but I'm going to live my own life. So let's recap. 5 responses that silence anyone. 1. I don't need to raise my voice to be right. 2. The way you speak says more about you than it does about me. 3. Let's talk when we can do it respectfully. 4. I'd prefer not to continue this conversation. 5. That's your opinion and I respect it, but I don't share it. These aren't just clever comebacks. They're tools for reclaiming your power in conversations where you've been made to feel small. They're ways to protect your dignity without sacrificing your relationships. They're how you stop being reactive and start being in control. And here's what I've noticed since I started using these. People treat me differently now. They're more careful with their words around me. They think twice before trying to steamroll me. Because they've learned that I don't play the game where whoever shouts loudest wins. I play a different game. One where clarity beats volume. Where self-control beats aggression. Where respect is earned through character, not fear. The Stoics figured this out 2,000 years ago. And it's just as true today. Maybe even more so, in a world where everyone's trying to outshout each other on social media, in meetings, in homes. When you speak with calm precision while everyone else is losing their minds, you become unforgettable. You become someone people actually listen to, even when they disagree with you. So here's my question for you. Which of these 5 are you going to use first? Think about the difficult person in your life right now. The one who always seems to win arguments even when they're wrong. Which response would change that dynamic? Drop it in the comments. Tell me which phrase speaks to you. Because I want to know. And I'll be reading every single one.